Dom Miranda is the sports anchor for WTHR. He has been following the Colts all season long, and it's going to give us some insight into just what's going on with the boys in blue. Dom, welcome. Monday morning, baby. How you feeling?
It's Victory Monday for
Yes,
the Colts.
sir.
Thank you for having me on. It is an absolute pleasure. You've been doing great work. Been following you all along. So love giving you some love because
what a
you're doing
guy.
this great job. But yeah, excited to talk some Colts.
I want to talk first things first, Anthony Richardson.
Yes.
I was at the game. I saw him come out. I saw him go in. I saw him come out. I saw him visibly frustrated. What's going on?
Well, okay, so not serious. Just first and foremost, I would be absolutely shocked if he missed Jacksonville this week. But obviously the injury questions are rearing their ugly head once again. Can this guy stay on the field? And because these hits, I mean, it's a defensive back, right? And the hit last year against Tennessee wasn't anything out of the ordinary, wasn't dirty either.
Like I saw Justin Fields take some smacks
Exactly.
yesterday. And like AR, that was just like an awkward hit.
Far smaller in stature than Anthony Richardson as well,
Yes.
right? I mean, that's part of
He's a big guy.
what you want out of your quarterback is a guy who can take hits. So I think playoff game type situation, Anthony Richardson comes back in and plays, but he just couldn't accelerate or explode the way he wanted to. And he said after the game it was a mutual decision because let's not forget Joe Flacco comes in and just takes the baton and goes right down the field and scores. I mean, that is why it is so important to invest in a backup quarterback. We saw it last year with Gardner Minshew. We saw it throughout the league.
Which I think we're in a better spot with Joe Flacco than, no offense to Gardner Minshew.
Correct. And, you know, a lot of people are going to say, well, the offense looked better with Joe Flacco. I mean, he just has operated NFL offenses before. This is like riding a bike for him.
What did I see the quote that it's like he's 8 days younger than AR's mom?
Yeah. He had a funny quote after the game. He's a great locker room guy, and he's exactly the guy you need. Because think about it, Nate. You bring in a backup quarterback to win games like that against the 3-0 football team with an excellent defense, and your starting quarterback goes down, and you have to stay afloat and win the football game. And that's exactly what they did. As far as Anthony Richardson goes, I'm a little upset because it feels like we were robbed of proof of concept of progress, because the whole point is he needs to fall in love with the mundane. He needs to fall in love with the 2nd and 5 conversion. He needs to fall in love with the 3rd and 4 across the middle, keep the drive moving. And that first drive was fantastic. I mean, they marched down the field and scored. And let's not forget, on the play he got injured, you know, he scrambled. It was a design run for a first down. So he's making the plays, and I think we would have seen a lot more progress against a really talented Pittsburgh Steelers defense too, and we were robbed of that. So, of course, the conversation today is going to be, can he stay on the field? I think he can. He's 22 years old. The progress is going to come, and I think we were robbed of that yesterday, but rather have a win in that situation than lose. So bottom line is to beat a 3-0 football team. You're 2-2 with a great opportunity the next 2 weeks.
Okay, talk to me a little bit more now about like where we are in these 4 games in. Like, how are we feeling about the season? What are you hearing from around your whisperings?
Yeah, okay, so I kept telling people I got to see a quarter of a season sample size. So that's 4 games. I have to see it. Well, Josh Downs missed the first 2 games. He comes back. Michael Pittman Jr., quiet as a church mouse, first 3 games. He had 11 receptions for just around or just over 80 yards the first 3 games. First half yesterday, 5 receptions, 100 yards. So say it's Joe Flacco, say it's the scheme. I think we saw proof of concept yesterday that the scheme is good. I mean, that is a good, talented defense you just played and put 27 points on, 17 of which in that first half. And so the wide receiver situation, we went into this season saying the offense was going to be explosive. And A.D. Mitchell gets open. He just, for some reason, cannot get on the same page with Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco. He's getting open at a high rate, so that's encouraging. Alec Pierce making plays down the field. Michael Pittman Jr. finally coming onto the scene. And I think we just saw why Josh Downs was the big player that everybody was talking about in training camp, because he was flashing day in and day out. And we tend to forget that he was injured in a 7-on-7 period that could have easily been avoided, and that made him miss the first 2 games. Didn't get it going against the Bears, but we saw
we don't need to.
We saw exactly what he can do, though. He can be that 6 to 8 receptions, 70 to 80 yards, and a touchdown. He can do that every single game, especially with the attention that Michael Pittman Jr. is getting, Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor are getting. So Josh Downs, huge X factor. Defensively, the story coming in was the secondary. I've actually been kind of impressed with Juju Brents being out for the season.
Okay.
Nick Cross has actually played well, forced a fumble yesterday. That hasn't been the reason they've been losing. Their run defense, which no one really expected. Deepest part of your football team is the defensive line.
And I think that the media, everyone was saying early on, question marks in the secondary.
Yes.
Question marks in the secondary. Secondary's kind of pulled through.
Jalen Jones is growing up before our very eyes. He was all over the field. And Dallas Flowers was playing electric as well. So I don't know. do we really know this football team after 4 games? I'm not so sure, but I think it's a gritty team who's taking on the personality of their head coach. And he always says it's going to take 4 quarters. It's going to take everyone in this room. And if you can piece together wins that way, in your division, not as good as maybe we were thinking. The Jags are an absolute mess. Tennessee's an easily beatable team. Those are your next 2 opponents. And you were within 2 points of Houston, first game of the year. So no red flags right now. I don't think we know the identity of this football team quite yet, but I think we can be positive moving forward.
What excites you the most about this team? If you had to pick one thing that gives you the most, just the jitters.
Well, we haven't seen them play their best football. There's no question about it. I mean, we're 2-2 right now at the end of September.
That's dancing around a little bit. Like, you had to pick one aspect of this team that is like, I freaking love the Colts because of X.
Jonathan Taylor. And I think I think his usage needs to be even higher than it already is. I mean, he's just a bona fide stud. He's healthy for the first time. We saw him go out late in that game with the high ankle sprain. I'm hoping that's not a serious injury. I don't believe it is. Chris Ballard said before the season, I expect a huge year out of Jonathan Taylor. He's going to be a stud, basically, is what he said. And I think we've seen it on limited touches, and I say limited, the running back workhorse position maybe isn't in this NFL anymore. But man, if you just give him 20 carries a game, he's rolling out of bed to a touchdown or 2 and 100 yards, I think. And that's the Jonathan Taylor.
They made it look easy on the first drive.
That's the guy that you paid. You paid him to come here and do that and bring some stability to this offense. And him and Anthony Richardson, I think the best is yet to come for those two. I'm not bailing on Anthony Richardson quite yet. I'm just not going to do it.
Okay. All right. And then I'm going to ask you to be vulnerable.
Oh.
What scares you about this team?
The offense. I mean, it's boom or bust, right? I think 2 things can be true. It's one of the most exciting potentials of this team, and it's one of the things that maybe still struggling to click thus far in the season.
What about the kicking game?
Okay, yeah, I am concerned about Matt Gay. Just a little bit. I mean, that's the guy you paid. I think one of the highest paid kickers in the league, and yes, he's
missed a bunch of 50-yard plus
kicks.
And
could have put that game away maybe a little sooner yesterday if he would have hit his field goal. So I'm stopping short because again, it's such a small sample size. But
it's like we're gonna end up on like a Pat McAfee thing where we have to like kick and like we like totally whiff it.
Yeah, kicking's
have you talked smack about kickers? And it's like, yeah, I have. And then you just like,
look, I think the secondary has answered some questions. I think this front 7 has figured some things out, although they did struggle a little bit with a running quarterback as well, but did a little better in the true run game. But again, 2 winnable games. You can be 4-2 here mid-October. You can win on the road in Jacksonville for the first time since 2014. Have not won in Jacksonville since 2014. They're an absolute mess. If you don't win that game, you have a lot of problems. And then Tennessee is turning the ball over at a high rate. I mean, you got to win these 2 division games.
Got it.
You're going to feel good with 4-2, haven't played your best football.
All right, Dom. So I've appreciated the insight thus far.
Of course.
But I want you to give some love to someone in the organization. Who's not getting enough love on the Colts team?
Who is not getting enough love?
Who do you think is just like crushing it, just like behind the scenes, or just like steady is like really dependable?
As far as players go?
Anyone in the org that you're seeing?
Well, I think this offensive line isn't getting talked about enough. I mean, have they been an issue? I mean, Jonathan Taylor's had running lanes all season long. I don't think you can blame the offensive line for struggling to have sustained drives together. I mean, a lot of times that's inaccuracy issues with Anthony Richardson or turnovers that we've seen. But, Ryan Kelly didn't play yesterday. Let's talk about that for a minute. How many injuries yesterday? Kenny Moore didn't play yesterday. Kwity Paye didn't play yesterday. DeForest Buckner on IR. Juju Brent's out for the season most likely. Ryan Kelly didn't play. Michael Pittman Jr. was on the injury report late this week. It's a beat-up football team. Tanner Bortolini came in at center and didn't skip a beat. This team was running the ball at will. Joe Flacco was getting time to make plays. How many critical 3rd downs did we see? So easy, not getting enough love as this offensive line, and that's been happening since Tony Sparano Jr. came into the picture. I mean, this offensive line loves him, and I think they're playing at a really high level. I mean, continuity has been the huge thing with this offensive line. That's why they bring all their same guys back, and this team at large. But I'm impressed with them. And again, I can't stress enough, huge opportunity these next 2 weeks where your offensive line should dominate the football game.